I spent about 15 to 20 hours of my life just gluing newspaper together. Around 700 sheets of newspaper in total. This was easily my most time-intensive build to date, and a lot of that time was just getting to the point where I have enough material to build a guitar with. I sourced all this newspaper from my local newspaper company, and they were just kind enough to let me grab a few bundles of misprints. Once I glued all the pages together, I put a piece of non-stick peel ply and a bleeder cloth over the paper, and then I sandwiched it all between a piece of MDF. And then I stuck it into a vacuum bag and compressed it by sucking all the air out. I built a guitar out of cardstock paper a few years back, which is similar in a way to what I'm doing here, but newspaper is around 5 times thinner than that cardstock I used, so the end material is a bit different. I also wanted to compress the newspaper with a vacuum bag and a bleeder cloth this time so that it would suck as much resin out as possible from the material, hopefully making it a little less heavy. Once I had all my strips cut, I glued and clamped them all together with the grain on top, which is going to be the strongest orientation for a guitar. Alright, after about 2 weeks worth of work, here's what I've got. A body blank and a neck blank, which means I'm finally ready to start building this guitar. Just for reference, that's roughly how much newspaper I used to create both the body blank and the neck blank. For the top of this guitar, I can just leave it as is. I think the grain looks pretty cool, but what I decided to do instead was glue on some historical newspaper headlines. I've got an original print of the Philadelphia Inquirer moon landing. I have a Beatles tour headline, a few Popeye comics from a newspaper. Granted, these are all American-centric headlines, but that's where I am, so that's what I'll use. The body design on this guitar is kind of like a Jazzmaster offset style that I tweaked a bit. Cutting through this material was pretty tough on the bandsaw blade, probably the most difficult thing I've had to cut in any of my projects, maybe aside from the salt block. I just sanded down the sides and you can start to see what the grain pattern looks like on the side. Not necessarily like wood, but it's pretty cool nonetheless. So the sides of the fretboard, like you can see right here, are kind of peeling up in certain areas, and I've got to do something about that. I've never done this before, but I'm gonna try putting a binding on the neck around the fretboard. I think it's gonna be the cleanest way to do this. For the neck, I'm putting these threaded inserts in the heel, and this is because if I were to use just like a normal neck bolt like you'd find on a Telecaster or a Strat, and if I try to screw this into this newspaper material, it just begins to split, and it's splitting down the grain. So I think inserts just makes the most sense. Okay, little issue here. The bridge I was planning on using is kind of this old school bucket style bridge, and I'm getting a ton of string rattle, and I'm like 99% sure that's because the break angle of the strings on the bridge just isn't enough. And I think this bridge is better suited for a string through design to increase that break angle. So I'm gonna pop this thing off and try a different bridge. So I'm pretty pleased with how this one came out. The sides ended up looking really cool. It's probably my favorite part about this guitar. The only thing I can think of that didn't really turn out as well as I had hoped is the fretboard, and it's these little gaps between the joints when I was gluing up the slab. It was just really difficult to tell whether or not they were all aligned properly. But aside from that, I think the fretboard looks really good. I did decide to leave it unfinished for now, at least. I like the contrast of glossy to matte between the face of the body and the fretboard. And the binding around the fretboard came out looking pretty slick, and I think it probably fix any potential issues with the paper delaminating on the sides. The pickups are P90s, which are probably my favorite type of pickups just because they're kind of a cross between single coil and humbuckers. As for the strength of this and its chances of holding up, I don't really have any concerns with that. This material is so hard and it shouldn't move much, if at all, in terms of the neck bowing. It actually stayed dead flat the entire build process, so I didn't even have to do any adjusting to it when I was setting up the guitar. It is a little bit hefty, weighing in around 9 pounds, but that's pretty much where I expected it to be, and that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I'll get on to the demo now. As always, you can follow my work on Instagram at BrosArt.